Hey guys, today we're gonna do something a little bit different. So let's go. You guys know this channel is predominantly about coaching, specifically coaching in youth soccer and how I go about running sessions, running games. And I'm thrilled that so many of you guys have subscribed to the channel. But one of the things that's happened over the last couple of years is I've gotten into really great offline conversations with people, especially around issues regarding the youth soccer system in the United States, in this country. So I wanted to spend a few videos talking about individual components of that, because I have a lot of opinions on this stuff, and I think it would be remiss of me not to share those. You really can't start a conversation about youth soccer in the United States without first addressing pay-to-play. The pay-to-play system is used by 99% of soccer clubs in the United States. The way it works is your son or daughter tries out for a club, and if they make that team, the primary funding for the team for that year comes to the parents, not the club itself or other avenues. So I do want to say that we're not talking about MLS academies. So those are generally completely free and funded by the club themselves. What I'm talking about is the 99% of all the other clubs out there in the country. So in other words, parents directly pay money to the club for their child to play. Payments can come in the form of registration fees, monthly membership fees. Sometimes there are specific team costs and tournament fees, and generally doesn't include travel or even the uniform. The club then uses that money to fund its operations, which include paying coaches, paying any type of administrative salaries, including the technical directors, the assistant technical directors. Oftentimes there is an office staff person who needs to be paid. There can be office rental space. Also, you have to pay for facilities. So any type of fees for fields that either are owned by the club or potentially they're renting from a park or a city or a county. This is essentially how cash flows through clubs in the United States. There are other forms of revenue for clubs, including advertisements, sponsorships, and even donations. However, they usually are a very small percentage in comparison to parent payments. In Europe, as well as many other countries around the world, the vast majority of the players' fees are shouldered by the club. This is in part because there are other forms of compensation available to that club that aren't available here in the United States, including training compensation and solidarity payments. In addition, many of the federations and governing bodies of these countries set aside money specifically to invest in youth soccer development. Also, the vast majority of these clubs have a first team, no matter what level they are within that pyramid. So they're looking at that player not as just a way to get revenue from a parent, but also as a potential long-term investment into their first team and potentially beyond to sell to another club. So looking at how clubs in other countries are funded, you can see that they are significantly less reliant on family contributions for compensation. While slightly off topic, this model sets up a completely different incentive, which is to develop players, because that's what's going to bring in more revenue, versus the incentives for most US-based clubs are to keep customers. 3 years ago, UEFA released a report that highlighted the overall investment in youth clubs across Europe. Here you can see a graph showing the average budget for clubs across Europe. 40% of the budget comes from the club itself. Now it says parent club funding there. It means the club. 20% comes from solidarity and training compensation, whereas only 14% of the overall budget came from either membership fees or families' contributions. If you're wondering how much money we're talking about, strictly on solidarity payments alone, in the last 10 years, UEFA's paid clubs in Europe, youth clubs in Europe, almost $1 billion. So I know a lot of you are asking, what are solidarity payments and training compensation? Well, without getting too into the weeds on this, basically anytime a player is transferred from one club to another, and this can be at any age, they could be 35 years old, A certain percentage of the fee paid goes back to the youth clubs that train that player from age 12 to calendar year age 23. The point is that the youth clubs are compensated for the time they spent developing that player. Now, up until recently, we didn't even have this at the highest levels of MLS. In fact, there have been several cases of contention here in this country between clubs that were non-MLS clubs that had a player that eventually went to an MLS club and was eventually sold overseas to Europe, and they weren't compensated for that. Despite some of these changes, there's still no system in this country for compensating youth clubs for developing players. So, for example, if you're a small club and your player goes to a larger club, and then let's just say they go to an MLS academy. That MLS academy at age 20 sells them to somebody in Germany for $10 million. You're not going to see any of that money if you're one of the clubs that trained that player when they were 12, 13, 14 years old. So because we don't have these other mechanisms to pay youth clubs here in the United States, they rely on parents and pay to play. Youth sports across the United States has become a multi-billion-dollar industry. A 2017 article in Time magazine highlighted the booming industry that was youth sports, and soccer was shown to cost parents thousands of dollars each year. Just last year, the Aspen Institute's Project Play released data showing the cost to play soccer again in the thousands of dollars. And this is average. So you have some families paying $5,000, even $10,000 a year for their child to play soccer. Compare that to the average fees that the Netherlands pay. You can see in the middle for youth soccer, they pay an average of 150 euros per year, which is 10 times less than what Americans pay. In a nutshell, guys, we are excluding players oftentimes at very early age groups based on income. This is 2017 data from the Sports and Fitness Industry Association comparing soccer to football to basketball to baseball and looking at participation rates based on household income. You can see the steep downward trend based on household income in soccer that is very different to football. If you have a low household income, you're extremely less likely to be playing soccer. Here's a pie chart from similar data that was released in 2019, and you can see that more than half of families that participated in youth soccer in the United States made over $75,000 per year. This has implications through the entire system, not just at the youth level. You see, in order to develop world-class players, we need a large player pool, and we can't be excluding players based on income. In many ways, we really don't know at 10, 11, 12 years old who will go on to be a great 15, 16, 17-year-old. And if you're excluding based on income, you're already depleting the possible talent pool and limiting the potential pro players we could have, as well as opportunities for growth and development in other players. At the end of the day, we're pushing away kids who want to play a game that's accessible to every other kid in the world. So there's no magic bullets, guys. There's no simple solutions. However, I do think there are some things that the governing bodies and the leadership within soccer, US soccer, the state associations could do. The first is they could incentivize clubs to develop players and implement training compensation and solidarity payments for all clubs across the United States. Second, they could certainly use revenue to subsidize clubs across the country for low-income and at-need families. Another thing to consider would be to regulate the leagues. There are so many leagues and it's so fragmented that you have clubs that are jockeying for position, paying outrageous fees just to be part of some league that they think is prestigious. The bigger picture here is this a symptom of a bigger disease? And I'm going to get into that when I do my promotion relegation video, but a lot of these things are because we don't have a system of promotion relegation. Hey guys, I'd love to hear your thoughts on pay to play and how it impacts you and your youth soccer system. So feel free to leave a comment or reach out to me directly through the email. And thanks for watching.